Okay, everyone, welcome. I've been waiting to cover the stock market charts and the technical analysis today, just really looking to see if anything was going to change or if there's anything new. I'm not saying I'm kind of struggling to find some new, changes in the market. So this video is a little bit of a repeat from yesterday's price action. There's a little rotation happening from tech into the financials and industrials, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing basically a constant handoff between tech and the industrials and financials. So it goes one day they're buying tech, the other day they're selling tech. It's kind of a handoff. So I want to point that out. We're going to start out here with the S&P 500, and you can see now we made a new all-time high on the hourly chart. Right there, we're just barely above the former high, which is, right about 425.44. We're making a new all-time high, and we're doing so on the daily chart with clean and clear negative divergence. So this is, just a continuation of this negative divergent pattern. You can see how the momentum on the RSI and the PPO are clearly trending down. These are telling me that we're going to have a correction, or we are going to reverse the uptrend. And we just got to wait for it. We need to wait for the sell signal. We don't have that quite yet. Now, the thing that you have to realize also on the daily chart, coming off the March 2020 lows, this has been the bullish trend since the COVID lows. And you can see we held support. I can go ahead and ditch this red one, but you can see we held support here, held support all through here, and finally broke. We had a break of trend. This is a clean and clear break of trend right there. And we are back testing over the last, really over the last week or so. We've been just bouncing to do a back test. This is what I was expecting, kind of. I've been talking about the potential to back test that broken trend line, make a new all-time high, and do so with negative divergence, which is likely, I'm thinking we're coming into the top of this, of this market before we, potentially have a correction. Or even worse, you never know how much more it's going to go down. This market is pretty loaded to the long side. There's a lot of bulls. So if selling starts, it could intensify rather quickly. All right, so we could go higher, continue to creep a little higher, maybe backtest 427, 428, somewhere right in there. That's where I'm looking for this to potentially stop. Could stop early, but ultimately, I see that as the area of resistance up there. So we have negative divergence now. We have a new all-time high, looking for a reversal candlestick. Looking at tech or triple Qs, a couple things on this one. So on the daily chart, you're coming off the March 2020 lows, held support here, and you can see as I zoom in, we continue to backtest. So again, I had that circled out, just saying, I could see us getting into this area. We do have an all-time new high. We've had that for a couple days now in the triple Qs. We do have negative divergence that remains on the RSI and the PPO. And we are just slightly below what looks like kind of major resistance up here at, right now it's up about 354. So another $4 up or so. Okay, so that's really all I see. It's really no change from yesterday. The technical posture still remains pretty much exactly the same. Negative divergence. We have a break in trend that we're doing a back test and back testing that trend line with negative divergence coming into major resistance. Let's flip over to gold. There's no real change in gold. You can see gold's pretty much flat today. And so the miners are, for the most part, pretty much flat. Agnico Eagle's interesting right in here. You can see on the daily chart, here's your downtrend line right there on Agnico Eagle, and we're really coming right in for a full back test. We could go slightly lower and maybe even tag that trend line, but we're still, right in there. It's pretty much flat. But if you look at the hourly, we're starting to build bullish divergence on the hourly. So you can see there on the RSI and on the PPO, if I can grab the right thing, we are making lower lows in price, slightly lower lows, and yet momentum is starting to move up. So that signals that to me, that signals that this is the buy zone for this stock. So, potentially a little lower down to about 61.70 or so. And then I think we're likely going to bounce. One thing you could do if you wanted to be conservative is just wait for a recovery of 62.75. That's a major support area. You can see back here, we held that area through as resistance. We've held it as support before. We held it as support right here. Lots of reactions. There's a gap around that level. So lots of reactions around that level. So if we go down a little bit more and then bounce up and recover that level, I would probably signal, that would be my signal as that was the low of this drop, and we're likely going to move higher from here. So continue to look for that. And again, a lot of these miners just continue to look like they're, in the buy zone. They're not all in the buy zone. Some are, some still could go lower. HMY looks like it's in the buy zone. Here's your downtrend line on HMY, and you can see just really more of the same from yesterday. We're just in the area, continuing to build. Here's the hourly chart, continuing to build bullish divergence on the hourly. So that's what that looks like. No real change. One thing I failed to point out about triple Qs, I want to point that out. It's really a shorter time frame, but looking at the hourly chart, we have this bearish rising wedge. You can see the top of the wedge, really 4 reactions, and then the bottom we've got 4 reactions. 1, 2, 3, 4. So a bearish rising wedge. That's a pattern that typically resolves to the downside. Doesn't have to, but probability says it does. And they popped it above to the top of that wedge. If we fail and come back down within that wedge, I would expect us to roll down and probably break to the bottom of the wedge. So if you're conservative, you could wait for a break of this lower trend line here. Or if you start to see us breaking down, you could take a starter short, and maybe add to it if we break the lower trend line. So look for that. As of right now, we're still holding the top of that wedge. You can see the hourly candles, how we're just kind of holding that trend line up there. So we have to wait to see how the day closes. I suspect we're probably going to close with a break back down into the wedge. So keep an eye on that. That's really just short time frame micro calls, but I just want to point it out in case we start to break down. And just looking at the sectors, so XLF continues to rally today. Again, I still see a break in trend. You got a clear uptrend right here, a bearish rising wedge in the financials. We broke trend. All right, we're bouncing. Moves don't just go straight down. So we could go all the way, maybe, I don't know where the bounce ends. Maybe it ends at 37.11. That's a little harder to call where every single bounce is going to end. But ultimately, I think we're heading down there. That's really how I'm trading it. I just kind of ride out these counter trend bounces and continuing to look for more downside. Here's XLI, same thing. March 2020 lows, clear uptrend. We broke trend. We're bouncing. I don't know where it ends, but ultimately I think we end up going like that, and potentially all the way down here. So just riding out those counter trend bounces, because again, this is all about swing trading. So it's not necessarily, in and out of positions constantly, but more about just looking for the actual swing trade. So that's how I see it as of right now. I don't see any change in technical posture that tells me that this downtrend, this break of trend is over. I just see this as a counter trend bounce over the last couple, really over this week. I want to point out this trade KHC. Now, someone pointed in the comments that they think it looks bullish, and I would agree. It is bullish in the short term, because if you look at this chart, you have an uptrend. All right, anytime something is in an uptrend and the trend is not broken, then there's no sell signal. There's no reason to short the thing, which you could argue is an area you'd step in and buy. All right, so I do want to point that out. Another thing is that you look at the RSI, yes, it is oversold. It's down at like 25. That's oversold, and we're oversold coming into support. So in that sense, yes, it's bullish. The other, and then there's also a gap right up here at 47.55 that hasn't been filled. You'd think that gap we'd run up and fill that gap. So in general, I do see that as bullish, but this is potentially the ending move. Because on the daily you have negative divergence now. You can see on the RSI and the PPO, negative divergence has been building, and so the uptrend is losing momentum. This isn't an uptrend. The stock's in an uptrend, and that has not changed. but the uptrend's losing momentum. That doesn't mean it can't rally and make another leg higher and then break trend. There's nothing to say that, and there's no reason to short this thing. The only reason I'd want to short this is if you get the break in trend. I was just merely trying to point out that the momentum indicators are indicating that we're starting to lose momentum. And so you look for the break in trend, but until you see it, no reason to short, no reason to necessarily get out of longs. Yeah, that's really what I see. So that's all I want to point out about that trade. And that's when I talk about negative divergence, I'm not saying short something because it has negative divergence. I'm just merely saying it's starting to lose trend or lose momentum. Look for a potential break in trend. But again, we don't take trades until we see those sell signals. Okay, SQ. I want to point this out on the daily chart. Here was your uptrend line on the daily. We held support right there, held support there. Finally broke, and so we broke trend, and we started to do a back test, but didn't have a full back test. And right now we do have a full back test. So you can see the last couple days it's been back testing the trend line. Today they recovered it. They recovered that trend line barely. It's still up above there. It's holding, but we'll see how the day closes. I suspect this is likely the end of the rally in SQ, and we are going to move down. And I'm really looking for prices to ultimately move all the way down to about 134.26, potentially lower, but we'll just take it level by level. So we do have a level of support here at 192.87 as well. Look for that breakdown in SQ. It doesn't have to show up today. It might come in the form of a gap down tomorrow. Who knows? But we're right there at major resistance, and yeah, that's really what I'm watching on that one. Let's talk about Tesla, and I'll probably wrap up here. I'm struggling to find ideas, and I probably could not even put a video out today, but I wanted to keep everyone kind of updated on what I'm seeing, even if there's no significant changes. Tesla, Tesla's rallied pretty strong the last couple days. You can see here it's up at a high of almost 10-11%. Looks to me like we're probably coming in for a back test of this trend line here. You got, on the daily chart, you held support through here. Several reactions. We finally broke. So there's your sell signal. So we broke, and this thing is a short in my perspective, but we could come in for a back test. So it's break, run up, back test, then fail. That's one potential. And yeah, that could easily happen. Ultimately, though, I think a backtest would be an opportunity to add to a short or establish a short if you haven't taken one, in my opinion, for a move down to 460.60. All right, we still have this level of support, and we're really just kind of in between. Here's your major support, your major resistance is right here, and we're just chopping around. If you really look at the bigger picture, we're just kind of going sideways. So that's all I see in that one. I'm still short this. I'm going to ride it out. Whether it wants to go a little bit higher, I'll probably just ride it out because I do. We broke the uptrend. This was your uptrend where we were holding trend. We finally broke. So it's a sell the rip stock, and this is a rip. The last 2 days it's ripped higher. To me, that looks like an opportunity to sell the rip, although it could go higher. That's completely possible. We could continue to rip higher. I still look at it an opportunity to add to a short or establish a short if you haven't done so. And that's all I've got for anything new today. Unless I see something else show up or the market does anything crazy, we'll probably just wrap here. Leave me a comment on any stocks you want me to look at. Leave me a thumbs up. And check out the course if you haven't done so. Link is in the description below. All right, guys, catch you on the next one.